Welcome to Ask a First Lady. I'm Jacqueline Kennedy, and I'd like to answer some of the most common questions that I get here. Starting with, why do I always wear dark glasses? Well, I said partly because we have no privacy. We're living in a fishbowl all the time. So when I wear dark glasses, at least none of them can see who I am looking back at. And that way at least I can have some fun with it. Was I born in France? No, I was actually born in New York. You know, it's a funny thing. Many people think that because my maiden name was Bouvier and because I lived in France for a little while when I was in college, that I really must be French, but I'm not. Most of my family, believe it or not, is Irish. My mother's family is all Irish. And on my father's side, I have one great-grandfather who actually was French. When I met André Malraux, the French Minister of Culture, I said to him, Monsieur Malraux, I have such an affinity for your country. I do have a great-grandparent who was French. And he said, really? I do too. But I've always loved France and the French people. When Jack and I visited France, people would hold up signs saying, Vive Jackie. And Jack told a crowd of reporters that he was proud to introduce himself. He was the man who had accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, and he enjoyed it. Is it true you were once a reporter? It is. In 1951, for a very short time, I was the inquiry news girl for the Washington Times-Herald newspaper. I would walk the streets of Washington and ask complete strangers questions like, what do you think of separate bank accounts? And do you think a wife should let her husband think he is smarter than she is? How did you meet John F. Kennedy? Oh, we met at a dinner party. We had some friends who had been shamelessly matchmaking for nearly a year. Usually that sort of thing does not work out, but this time it did, so I am grateful. Jack was different, something special. My mother used to bring around all these bows for me, but Jack really was different. When we finally married, I was hoping for a small, elegant wedding, but the Kennedys would have none of that. We had 26 groomsmen and bridesmaids at our wedding, 900 guests at the mass, 1,200 at the reception. My mother had told me that I should wait and judge a man by the quality of his correspondence. Wish you were here. Cheers, Jack. This is my entire correspondence from Jack Kennedy. What was it like to grow up so rich? Well, actually, I really didn't grow up as rich as people think. It was a very privileged, of course, growing up. I lived in East Hampton and in New York City when I was very young. And when my mother married Hugh Auchincloss, he was one of the heirs to the Standard Oil fortune. We lived in his beautiful estate outside Washington, D.C. and in Newport. But it wasn't quite as wealthy as you might think. My sister and I, we weren't going to inherit any of that Auchincloss money. And my father drank a lot, so money was not always stable. I remember wondering once when I was in school whether my father would actually be able to pay our tuition bills at all. It was not as rich as you really might think it was. What was it like living in the White House? Oh, well, it wasn't what I expected. I had thought, oh, there'll be no privacy. I'll never see my husband. But really, it was the time when we were closest. I hadn't realized the intimacy of having my husband working in the same building and sometimes even having lunch with him. If you'd told me that would happen in the White House, I never would have believed it. I spent most of the money that was allocated to the president's family for redecorating on the family quarters. I put in a kitchen because it was so important to me that we have meals together, and I loved it when the house was full of noises and children. Sometimes in the morning, Jack's valet, George Thomas, would knock on the door and the children would come tumbling in and they would turn the television on, going absolutely full blast, And Jack would sit in his chair and eat breakfast, and he'd be telling the children to do what that exercise man, Jack LaLanne, is doing on the television. So he'd have them tumbling around. He just loved them tumbling around. That's when I liked the White House most, when it was really a family home, which of course it always is. You didn't have much interest in politics, did you? Well, no, I really didn't. Some reporter asked me once where I thought the next Democratic National Convention should be held, and all I could think of to say was Acapulco. But of course, not many Americans think that the First Lady should have a strong interest in politics. I always felt my most important role was to be a distraction. When Jack came home, I always liked to have his favorite record playing and perhaps a few friends. Oh, and his favorite drink, a daiquiri. Well, Jack would probably say it was a Heineken, but I always say it was a daiquiri. You know, I had to tape his favorite daiquiri recipe up in the kitchen of the White House. It's 2 parts Bacardi rum with 2 parts frozen limeade, 1 part fresh lime juice, and a few drops of sweet syrup. It's the fresh lime juice, that's key. What was your cause? Well, I didn't really have a cause, but of course I pursued things that really mattered to me, and that certainly kept me very busy. For example, the White House. When Mrs. Eisenhower first showed me around the White House, all I could think was, oh, God, it's the worst place in the world. So cold and dreary. It looked like it had been furnished by a discount furniture store. I called it that dreary Maison Blanche. The windows didn't open, and when we tried to use the fireplaces, they smoked because they had not been used in so long. And so little about history. There were all these people coming to see the White House, and they saw almost nothing that dated to before 1948. I knew I'd feel terribly if I lived in that house for 4 years and had not done anything for those rooms. Now, Jack had to be convinced of the worthiness of the project, so we set up a fine arts committee and hired a curator. We went through all 54 rooms of the White House, looking for forgotten historical treasures. I just felt so strongly the White House should have as fine a collection of American paintings and furniture as possible. It's so important, the setting in which the presidency is presented to the world, to foreign visitors. We brought in antiques. I thought the whole White House should have as fine a collection of American furniture and paintings as possible. We had 15 state dinners, and we reorganized all those. We put out a guidebook about the White House, and we redecorated the Oval Office. It was a great deal of work. When I found out in 1963 I was expecting another baby, it was sort of a relief, because at least then I could somehow relax. Why were people so worried that John F. Kennedy was Catholic? Oh, I don't know. I think people thought that maybe the Pope and the Catholic Church were going to run the government. I never could understand it. Why would people be so opposed to Jack merely because he was a Catholic? He was such a poor Catholic. What is one thing people don't know about you? Well, this really isn't that unusual for my time, but yes, I was a smoker. It was a bad habit I picked up at boarding school. It was a girl in my school who taught me how to smoke in the balcony of a movie theater in New York. She pressed a cigarette on me and then led me out when ushers came to complain. People could not hear the film with all that coughing going on. So I said, no photographs, smoking. Did we have any pets? Oh, well, we did. We had 4 dogs, and Caroline had a canary, and at one point she had ducks, but one of our dogs kept trying to eat those. And of course she had her pony, Macaroni, and I had a German shepherd named Clipper that my father-in-law gave to me. One of those awful newspaper women one time asked me, what was it that I fed him? And I told her, reporters. Do you like being First Lady? Well, yes, but I really never liked the term First Lady. It always sounded to me so much like a saddle horse. Now, I hope you'll stay tuned because there will be more episodes of Ask a First Lady coming with more First Ladies. So please do come back and learn more.